Hey everybody, welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. The other day I reviewed the game Dungeons of Doria, and one of the game's design elements I drilled into in some detail was the D10 based combat system, which I thought was really clever. I'm not going to go through it all again here as all the information is in my review, but it's basically opposed dice rolls, but with extra layers of rules to consider, such as exploding 10s, which allow for much larger scores, fumbles when rolling 2 or more 1s, and critical hits, which are applied for each 10 points by which you beat your opponent's score. The winner then applies damage, which can be blocked with armour under certain conditions. I certainly liked the combat system. It gives you something to think about and it's well executed. And it's always fun to see interesting new ways to work with dice to open up tactical choices in games. I did a video quite some time ago where I talked about other dice systems that I like. Some of those are really inventive. However, despite that, there is still a lot to be said for really quick, streamlined dice-based combat. The kind of combat that you can resolve in seconds so the action never slows down. For me, the king of simple dice combat was, is, and probably always will be HeroQuest. There is something so elegant and beautiful about the way HeroQuest distills combat into a single opposed dice roll. I doubt I need to explain it in detail, but for anybody who isn't aware, HeroQuest uses one type of custom D6 that all heroes and monsters use. 3 faces of the dice are skulls, representing hits. 2 faces are heroic shields, representing blocks for heroes. The final face has an evil shield, representing a block for monsters. That means heroes have a 1 in 2 chance of hitting something with each dice rolled, and a 1 in 3 chance of defending with each dice rolled. Monsters have the same chance of scoring hits as the heroes do, 1 in 2, but they only have a 1 in 6 chance of defending. And that's all there is to it. Sure, you can cast spells or use potions that might give you a reroll or some other temporary boon, but for the most part the dice combat is a single roll to attack with a single roll to defend. Deduct shields from skulls and apply the remainder as damage to the target. Easy, there are no critical hits and no fumbles. But even so, the dice system still offers some scope to vary things up with new special abilities. For example, if you want a really powerful monster, you could state that when heroes roll for defense, only the enemy's shields count as blocks, reducing their odds of success. Similarly, for monsters with stronger defense, you could state they can defend using the heroic shields, increasing their ability to shrug off attacks. In the Advanced Quest edition of the original game, there were Doom Guards, who would block all incoming damage if they rolled even a single evil shield, making them significantly tougher. These systems certainly isn't the most flexible, and that is a concession to keeping things fluid and simple. But with a game like HeroQuest, keeping turns moving quickly and ensuring the dungeon plunging never bogs down unnecessarily is really essential. From the same stable as HeroQuest comes another of my favourite games, Space Crusade. With the same creative mind behind this science fiction classic, it's no surprise the rules are equally as streamlined and the dice combat is just as simple. There are 2 custom D6 in play here, white or light dice and red or heavy dice. White dice have 1 success on one face, 2 successes on one face and 0 successes on 4 faces. Commonly you will roll 2 white dice together, which gives you a 55% chance of scoring at least 1 success and a 33% chance of 2 successes. Red dice only have 3 0 faces, and then there is 1 1, 1 2 and 1 3. So not only does the red dice have an increased chance of scoring hits, it has an increased chance of scoring stronger hits. This is really neat because using the dice in different combinations adds to the potential spread of results. With 2 white dice, you will have 55% chance of at least 1 success. With 1 white dice and 1 red dice, the odds increase to almost 67%, and with 2 reds, the odds increase again to 75%. And of course you may get to roll more than 2 dice, or even re-roll dice if you have the right equipment. It's a surprisingly robust system, with a degree of flexibility that might not be initially apparent, considering as, just like in HeroQuest, there are no fumbles, critical hits, or exploding dice. Interestingly, combat is also different depending on whether you are shooting or attacking in hand-to-hand combat. If you shoot at a target, you roll your dice and compare the total successes to the target's armour. For each point in excess of the armour rating, you inflict 1 hit. However, in hand-to-hand combat, both attacker and defender roll their dice and compare the totals. The character scoring highest wins the fight and inflicts damage on the loser equal to the difference between the scores. While we are talking about old classics with nice simple dice systems, I feel I should also mention Advanced HeroQuest, which lives up to its name by implementing a more complex system, but a system which I feel is still incredibly quick and easy to use. One of the most interesting things about Advanced HeroQuest is it uses the D12, so you get a wider spread of results compared to using D6 or custom D6, allowing for combat to be slightly more nuanced. There's no opposed dice rolling here. Instead, characters have a hit roll chart which lists the number they need to roll depending on their weapon skill and the weapon skill of their foe. You simply roll your D12, and if your roll is equal to or higher than the required hit roll value on the chart, you are successful. Adding a little spice to the system are critical hits and fumbles. A critical hit occurs if you roll a 12, or an 11 or 12 if you are swinging something suitably heavy, like a battle axe. For every critical hit, you get to make one free attack. Conversely, every roll of a 1, or a 1 or 2 if you are using something heavy, is a fumble. A fumble will always miss, but even worse, it creates an opportunity for the target to immediately make a free attack on you. Free attacks are rolled immediately and may generate their own critical hits and fumbles, sometimes resulting in hilarious swings of fortune as bad results cascade. After determining how many attacks successfully strike the target, you roll again for damage. The number of damage dice rolled depends on the weapon, with the bigger, more powerful weapons obviously having a greater potential damage output. Each dice rolled is compared to the target's toughness and will inflict one wound if it matches or exceeds that value. Any rolls of 12 are classed as critical damage and will explode, letting you roll that dice again. Exploding dice can continue exploding, so a string of good rolls can turn even mighty foes into a fine red mist. And that's it really. Oh, go on. I've talked about Advanced HeroQuest, so let's talk about Advanced Space Crusade 2. That game also uses D12s. Advanced Space Crusade is not a simple streamlined game. It has a lot of moving parts and many small rules to ingest and understand before games run smoothly, but the dice combat, at its core, is surprisingly straightforward. When a character fires a gun, they either make a snapshot from the hip or an aimed shot. You can make snapshots multiple times in a round, but you can only take one aimed shot in a turn as you are sacrificing a faster rate of fire for improved accuracy. Each character has their own snap fire and aimed fire characteristics on their character profiles, and that tells you how many dice to roll. For example, a Space Marine Commander has a snap fire characteristic of 2d plus 1, which means he rolls two 12-sided dice and adds 1 to each of them. The scores of the dice are not combined. If any dice rolls, including modifiers, are equal to or greater than the target's armor rating, then the target is destroyed. Normally you roll against the target's exposed armor rating, but if they are in cover or prone, then you use their higher in cover armor rating. Regardless of the armor value, one success is enough for a kill. There are no hit points, no armor saves, no opposed dice rolls, no second chances. The game is deadly. Close combat is similar and just as deadly. Each character has their own close combat value. For our example of a Marine Commander, it's 1d plus 8, which means he rolls 1d12 and adds 8 to the score. He may also get additional modifiers for a rear or flank attack, or for kicking a character while they are down. In melee, both the attacker and defender roll, then they pick their one single highest dice and add all their modifiers. The character with the lowest score is destroyed. Armor doesn't factor into the equation at all. The only additional wrinkle is that some characters with swords have the ability to parry. This lets them force their opponent to re-roll one of their dice, which can turn the result of a battle on its head. One of the things I think is really fun about the Advanced Space Crusade combat system is that it really is just Advanced Space Crusade combat. When shooting, you roll dice and compare your score to the target's armor. In close combat, you have a dice-off, best result wins. And despite being a slightly more complicated system, it's still very easy to learn and blisteringly fast during a game. I'm going to talk about all of this a lot more in a lot more detail when I cover Advanced Space Crusade on the channel in the near future. But so far in this video I've only looked at old classics. I am nothing if not predictable. But to wrap up this video, I did want to look at something a little bit newer. Not new, just newer. A bit. I recently treated myself to a copy of Shadows of Brimstone: City of Ancients. The game has been floating around in my want to play list for years, so I thought it was finally time to give it a whirl. Of course, Shadows of Brimstone takes a lot of its design cues from Warhammer Quest, so it's no surprise it's a pretty simple, straightforward game with pretty simple, straightforward combat rules. The combat system is something I could immediately get behind and enjoy. Each character has two different 2-hit values, one for close combat attacks and one for using ranged attacks. These values define the score the character needs to match or exceed on a regular d6 to score a hit. The number of dice they roll depends on the type of attack. If they are making a close combat attack, they roll dice equal to their combat value. If they are using a ranged weapon, they roll dice equal to the weapon's shots value. Each success rolled is a hit, each natural 6 rolled is a critical hit. The player can then choose to distribute the hits however they like among valid targets. For each hit, it is then necessary to roll 1 regular d6 for damage. The value of each dice is reduced by the target's defense score, and anything left over is applied as damage. Critical hits bypass the defense score completely, and the full value of the roll is applied as damage. And I really do like this system a lot. Sometimes it can get a little bit convoluted when you start paying grit to reroll some of your dice, or you have weapons and abilities that trigger depending on your rolls, but for the most part you are simply rolling dice to match a value, and then rolling dice again to exceed an armor value to inflict wounds. It's really straightforward and really fast, and it means that once you know what you are doing, fights are quick and brutal and never overstay their welcome, which means you always feel like you are pushing forward, making progress, and enjoying exploring the location. So there we go, 5 different combat systems that I admire for their simplicity. That's not to say I don't like more complex combat systems, as long as they're engaging, I'm good, but I always enjoy seeing something streamlined and elegant, implemented well. There is a certain kind of joy in a system that is easy to internalise, so you can push the rules off the table and simply lose yourself in the adventure as it plays out. Now, what about games that don't use dice for combat at all and instead use cards? That's for another video, because that's it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like the video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so, and hopefully I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone, bye bye.